Hello. Let's see whether we've gone live today, because we didn't quite manage it last week, did we? Well, today we are talking about people. For those of you who haven't already heard about the 7 pillars of influential communication, this is the framework that I've developed to help my speakers to consider, how are they being influential? What is the framework, as I said, the basis, the pillars, if you will, of creating influence as you're speaking? Well, I bang on about the why, the purpose, and that is crucial. Without knowing that fundamental thing of why am I speaking, then you can't come on to the next one, which is the people. Who am I speaking to? When you know who you're speaking to, that really clear image of your people, your audience, then you can start doing a little bit of unpacking. What do I mean by that? Well, you know your why, you know your purpose, but how are you going to express that in a way that makes sense if you haven't clarified your people? Those of you in business know about the concept of an avatar. This is your ideal client. Well, as speakers, we have an ideal audience as well. An ideal audience that you know how to speak to. One of our speakers in the past, okay, so who's your audience? Oh, anybody who needs to hear this message, who requires some inspiration, and yeah, anyone, everyone, and no one. So this is where I would invite you to consider carefully, who is it that you're speaking to? Because this will influence the words you use, the language patterns. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. I was once working with a guy who was a careers coach. And I said, okay, who's your ideal audience? And he said, well, anyone in transition, from school leavers up to transitions into retirement. And I said, so would you use the same language with your mates, your peer group, as with your granny? Was the reaction. Point taken. So knowing who you're talking to, have that idea of a demographic. It could be an age group. For some of my more spiritual folks, we look at an energetic demographic rather than a physiological demographic, and that takes a little bit of teasing out. But again, the reason I'm speaking about this is because, let me give you an example from the TEDx conference that we did last weekend. Now, one of the speakers was talking about the teenage brain and explaining about how to support teenagers in those years when all sorts of things are going on in the brain and synapses are being pruned off right, left and center unless they're actively being used. And she was giving an example of what happened with her son when he had an accident. It was a very nasty car smash, actually. And she was saying that he'd had nasty grazes on his hands. He was very lucky. That's the only thing he came out with. And they've got some beautiful scars on there. I saw them myself. And he assured his mum it gave him main character vibes. Now, when she first said this, went right over my head. I have no dealings with teenagers. And yet the parents in the room and the teenagers that she was addressing, yep, they got it. They'd got it. I wasn't the demographic. I wasn't the people. that she was talking to. And that's okay. You can't speak to everybody and have the same impact. Something else you may have heard me explain is how the English-speaking world do not all speak the same version of English. If you haven't already heard my tale of my first networking experience, we'll try this one off aside. I moved from the UK to Australia. My first networking meeting, somebody complimented me on my pants. Whoop, I went bright red, excused myself and went to the ladies. I thought my flies were undone because in the UK, pants are what you wear next to your skin. I looked down, nothing wrong there. Composed myself, went back into the room. Somebody who had witnessed this and knew where I was from sidled up to me and whispered in my ear, "You know, she was talking about your trousers, don't you?" I went bright red again. Why did I not know that? Now, I knew pants meant trousers in America, but I didn't know it meant it here in Australia as well. We all speak the same language. Not. So there will be times when there are cultural references that you will be familiar with that will fall flat unless you're speaking to people who've had that same experience. Knowing your people and speaking appropriately to those people. If you are talking about experiences then, so those common experiences that you've had growing up, cultural references, age, the language associated with those experiences will be invaluable for making that connection, for having that rapport. That is really important because that rapport, that presence, which is another one of my pillars, is what that heart-to-heart connection with your audience is, what they really get, what they're really after. I wonder, have you ever been at a presentation where you felt there's a real disconnect between the speaker and you as an audience member? Maybe there was just something not quite there. They didn't resonate, they didn't gel with you. They weren't present with or for you. And that may be because you're not their demographic. They weren't speaking directly to you, and that's fair enough. So again, it goes back to, who are you speaking to? What are their language patterns? How are they describing their lives? And if you use those words with them, you got them. Because you're reflecting their own thoughts back to them. And that is really powerful. Another example of that. Years ago, I worked in a clinical situation as a speech pathologist with adults with intellectual disability. One of the guys I went to see, he had autism as well, and he was in a sheltered workshop. And I thought to myself, there's something different about this guy. So we sat down and did some work together, explored a bit more about what was going on for him. And we used a combination of words, a combination of pictures. And we got out of him, bear in mind this is a sheltered workshop, that he wanted to work in computers And I thought, yeah, there's something about you. I reckon you could do this. Because of his challenges, he hadn't coped with testing and had left the equivalent of year 10 without any qualifications, without anything measurable to say what he was capable of. You know, those tests that teachers love and actually say to employers, it's a snapshot of what you're capable of. Well, this guy hadn't had anything like that. But there was something about him that I was starting to speak his language and hearing back his language and using those same points of reference with him. And together we hatched a plan for getting him across the line to try something that he could get a qualification from. I said I'd do the same thing at the same time. It was a computer qualification. Now, hands up, I'm not the most techie person. He took this as a competition. He finished that course in a matter of weeks. I still haven't finished it. He went on to go into a college of further education and then went on, because he got that piece of paper, to go into a university degree. Bear in mind, this was a guy who had been in a sheltered workshop. Then he graduated from this university course and landed himself a job, an internship with one of the local really big companies. We started talking the same language. And when he felt that that connection was there, that trust was there, he was prepared to come on board with the things that I suggested. Now, that's a one-on-one situation, but I use that by way of example, that you do that with your audience. You build that connection, you build that rapport with your people because you know who you're speaking to and you know exactly the words you're going to use that are going to resonate with them. Yes, you may be talking to a big group and not everybody is your person. But when you have such clarity, the people who are even on the periphery of your said bullseye target avatar person, they're going to really warm to you because you've got that clarity there. You've got that presence. You've got that sense of connection. Now, whilst I wasn't the teenager or the parent of said teenager, I really resonated with what this speaker said. And I learned from her. Oh boy, did I learn from her. I took out what I needed to from that talk. Even although I wasn't the ideal demographic, those in the audience who were parents really lapped it up and got so much out of it. And that TED Talk, I'm pretty certain, will go viral when it gets published. So cycling back then, who are your people? Who are the people who need to hear your message? When you've got your purpose, your why sorted out, and you can clearly articulate it to your people, you've got that rapport. You are suddenly very influential. Trust this is making sense. If you'd like to clarify any of these thoughts, get back to me. Oh, and we have a workshop coming up next week. I'll put the information and the details. 7 pillars of influential communication. Let's get you red hot and influential in all your communication, particularly your speaking. For now, bye from me.